The views expressed, opinions given, and any communication made between the hosts and guests of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Para-X Radio, EMC Network, or all services that play this show. The hosts and services are not responsible for the actions of their guests, and the original rights of all intellectual property is retained by the creator, and all work is used with either permission or Creative Commons license. The show is for entertainment purposes only. I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
And tonight we're asking you...
What are you afraid of? Philadelphia's horror home with hosts T. Fox Dunham and Phil Thomas.
Well, you know, Phil.
Yes.
We kind of do a mix of things here on the show. We do paranormal, ghost stories, horror, but we also like to do pulp, crime fiction, noir, and we like to talk to authors.
Absolutely.
One of the things we do here is we profile many of the working authors out there that are just fighting every day to get the words on the page and get their stories out there, and they're waiting to be discovered by a big New York publisher, but until that time they're just out there keeping the faith, keeping it real, and producing the majority of work that you find on Kindle and helping those other voices find expression.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Well, did you get your haircut?
I did.
Yeah, well, you got his haircut, everyone. That's nice.
Yeah, I got my haircut. Yeah.
Yes, it's
the highlight of my week.
Phil got his haircut on episode 108, Paranormal and Pulp Fiction, the haircut episode.
The haircut episode. That would be the most uneventful episode. Just an hour of me getting my haircut.
Okay, we could do that. We're so desperate, like episode 220. Today on What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show, we're off to get haircuts. Please kill us.
And all we hear is scissors going the whole time, right?
Click, 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 click. Yeah. But we've got a cool guy on the show. He's an old friend of mine. We've come up through the ranks together. We fought on the front lines together. We really do sound like soldiers.
Yeah,
don't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me tell you a little about him. His name is Mark Slade. He's appeared in Weird Book 32, Startling Stories, Switchblade Magazine, and other publications. He is the author of Blackout City Confidential, Book of Weird, and A Six Gun and the Queen of Light. Coming up, Close to the Bone Publications will release Witch for Hire and Mr. Zero. He also writes and produces the audio drama Blood Noir that airs on Para-X Radio. The audio drama Daniel Dread is currently in production, co-created with Lothar Tupin, and Mark lives in Williamsburg, Virginia, with his wife and daughter. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Fox? It's been a while.
It has.
How you doing, Phil?
Yeah, I don't think we've actually ever spoken verbally before.
No,
I don't think so. But a lot of messages.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean,
a lot of messages.
You could fill up our Facebook with the messages that we've gone back and forth. And we've done a lot of work together over the last couple of years. You know, I always seem to have a story for you, you know? Yeah. You've helped me go through my back file and get the stories back into light out there. You know, you publish a story in a magazine, and then it goes dead in your filing cabinet. Then an anthology comes along and wants to bring it back for you.
Yeah, you're backlogged. And I just finished my book.
Yes, you did.
And I'm going to start doing a lot more short fiction.
Yes,
you know,
you got to get your name out there.
Right.
Yeah, I'm finishing up something now that I need to get done by the end of the month, and I had this huge plot written out, complex, end of the world, Akira type plot, with bodies exploding and ancient world Matrix like secret histories.
Nice.
And then I'm looking at this and I'm trying to convert it into a 5,000 word story, and my head blew up, and I finally said, "This isn't going to work."
Not in 5,000 words.
No, so I had to scrap the whole thing and come up with a new plot this morning. 10 days till the story needs to be submitted.
Yeah. No, I would still take what you were doing, though, and just
but something else with it.
Do something else with it. You make it longer, obviously.
A novella, I think.
Yeah.
But that's what you have to do sometimes, is you have to be able to plan and predict and produce and market these stories, not just write them.
Right.
Well, Mark, it's cool to have you on. We wanted to ask you about the new anthology that's coming out, A Time for Violence.
Oh, yeah. I just happened to fall into that one. I think it was, last year when I became friends with Chris Roy and Andy Rausch. Did I say his name right?
Yes, you did.
I think I did. We were talking back and forth, both all three of us, different times. But Chris told me about this anthology that he was doing with Joe Lansdale and a couple other big names into it. He mentioned you, and I asked him. I said, "Well, I've got something I've been working on, my Barry London stories." And I said, I can't seem to sell it.
Mm-hmm. Would
you take a look at it and see if you could put it in the book? If not, it's no big deal. And he read it and he said, "Hey, this fits in just perfect. It's exactly what we were looking for. This type of crime story." So, yeah, I was really honored that he took it.
Chris, who was on the show from his prison cell.
That's right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Andy Rauch, who was on the other week, came on to hang out and tell us about this a little bit. And there's some great names in this book: Richard Keismar, Richard Goodwin, Joe R. Lansdale, Max Allen Collins, Paul Brazil is a good friend. He's going to be on the show. Isabella Blackthorne will be on. And Billy Hidmar, his son, is in the anthology. Tony Knighton will be on. John A. Russo, one of the producers of Night of the Living Dead, is in this anthology. Richard Christian Matheson, Elka Ray, Tom Bader, and of course Chris Roy, and the amazing Mark Slade.
That's right, yeah.
So this is going to be a great book. I know they're getting it ready for market. They're going to have it out in a few months, and I'm sort of leading the charge of promotion here.
Right.
Yeah. And of course I have a story in it.
Yeah,
in the New Jersey mob.
Disrespected.
Disrespect. Hey, they disrespected the guy. They took him down to his place in Atlantic City. They asked him to make some drinks. They popped the guy in the back of the neck with an ice pick.
Oh.
That's what they do in Jersey.
That's what they do in Jersey.
Philly mob,
Yep.
I'm going to get myself killed. One day I'm going to be doing that. Anyway, so we are going to start, as we always start, with a ghosty story. And thank you, Mark Nesbitt of Gettysburg, who let us just record a bunch of his stories and put them on the show. We have a lot of other ghost stories coming too, but I like the Mark Nesbitt ones.
Oh yeah.
Especially the Pennsylvania ghost stories. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show, episode 108, Paranormal and Pulp Fiction, on Para X Radio on Friday nights at 9 p.m. You can also find our website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com, which I have been expanding quite a bit. You can find a lot of our ghost stories over there with narrated versions, a page for every episode, a bunch of articles, stories, and interviews over www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com. So, without further ado, we pay our first ghost story. This is from Mark Nesbitt. It's called Surprise Re-enactment on What Are You Afraid of? An authentic reenactment. A ghost story collected by Mark Nesbitt from his books, Ghosts of Gettysburg. Used with permission by the author, Mark Nesbitt. Read by T. Fox Dunham. Set in Gettysburg. One of the older park rangers, who had been patrolling the Gettysburg battlefield grounds before it became such a popular place, told the story once of a group of foreign dignitaries touring the battlefield. They had been to the various sites of the opening shots and General Reynolds' death, past the field of Pickett's charge, and to the summit of the much-fought-over hill of rocks and boulders called Little Round Top. From the summit they could see virtually the entire battlefield, from the white spire of the Lutheran Seminary and the shining column of the Eternal Peace Light Memorial of the First Day's battlefield, to the remarkable terrain features with colorful names in the area below them, such as Devil's Den, the Wheat Field, the Devil's Kitchen, Bloody Run, and the Valley of Death. They were also surprised and quite pleased at the special demonstration they witnessed being performed in front of them, seemingly just for them. A Civil War regiment in full battle gear, what would, in more recent years, be called a reenactment group, wheeled and maneuvered, demonstrated and marched in the valley below them, showing a precision of drill that was uncanny for the weekend hobbyists. As if it were a child's set of blocks moved by some unseen hand, the precisely choreographed display wheeled once more and marched off, at the old quick step, into the woods and out of sight. The visiting dignitaries were duly impressed, as they descended the hill, by the hospitality shown to them by their hosts, the United States National Park Service. When they returned to the park headquarters, they made it a point to thank their host for arranging a surprise demonstration of such a large and obviously well-trained group of reenactors just for their benefit. A surprise demonstration was indeed. No reenactment group had been scheduled for their benefit that sultry afternoon. No regiment-sized group was even visiting the battlefield that day. No one was more surprised at the gracious thank you than the park representative.
What are you afraid of?
Hi, I'm Tim Wagner, Bram Stoker award-winning author.
Hashtag Grave Girls. This is Katrina Weidman of Destination America's Paranormal Lockdown.
This is Jim Chambers. I'm the author of The Engines of Sacrifice.
This is Jasper Barr, award-winning author of The Final Cut.
And you're listening to What Are You Afraid Of?
What Are You Afraid Of?
To What Are You Afraid Of?
What are you afraid of?
Love it. Fantoxic, please. Fantoxic.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Saint is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head, the sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered, lyrical, supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn. I'm Jenna Valadez with The Basement Files. Tune in Friday nights, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Para-X Radio Network.
So yeah, they were just hanging out in the fields of Gettysburg, and they thought they were witnessing a reenactment. Mm. And they went to the park ranger and said, "That was great this morning. We didn't know they were going to do that." And they said, "We didn't have any reenactments scheduled today."
Yep. That's a great.
Me and my wife and daughter went to Gettysburg 2 summers ago. We actually had stopped by, I think it's Martin Nesbitt's house, but it looked like they were closed or...
Oh, he's busy.
I didn't want to intrude. But yeah, that was a fun time.
He's always
going to Gettysburg.
Out there and giving lectures and tours and speaking engagements.
He's always out and about. He's got that bookstore. That's probably where you were.
Right. We recorded there.
The bookstore. And we recorded there. With interview with him. Yeah, it was great. Right in the back. Mm-hmm. So was that your first trip to Gettysburg?
It sure was.
Oh, right.
It sure was.
Nice. And you, what was your initial impression when you first got there?
Oh, I wasn't even sure what it was going to be like. To be honest, I thought I was going to have a boring time.
No.
And I didn't. No, it was so much. It was so much information to let sink in, and a lot of stuff to learn. And what is the one where you climb up and
Devil's Den.
Something?
Devil's Den.
Well, Devil's Den has the big rocks.
Yeah.
But if you're climbing up the hill, we're probably talking Little Round Top.
Yeah, but I think he means where you climb up actually on the rock itself, and
We talking about the big boulders?
Yeah, that area.
Yeah, I think he's talking about Devil's Den.
Yeah.
Okay, because that has the big boulders. Yeah.
And of course
that was really
there's
nice.
that great ghost story
they're right across the field from each other, like directly.
Yeah. And the other one's Little Round Top.
And
Little Round Top has a little like steeple
Yeah, it's a little. Yeah, you can climb up. You can climb up it and everything. And
of course, that great ghost story from Devil's Den, the actual devil that appears, this guy with long black hair and like a beard, and he scares the crap out of tourists or tour guides or rangers, and then vanishes in front of you.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, and the whole place. I mean, I think just Gettysburg in general, the whole place is just haunted.
Yes,
I mean,
everything.
One of my favorite stories is from like 20 years ago, where this person is walking by one of the structures. I don't know what it was. It was, a modern business at that point, but they were looking and they noticed something in the basement. And it was like a makeshift hospital. And they saw this. This was, not that long ago, and somebody getting their leg amputated with a saw.
I think you're talking about. I've also heard this story in Gettysburg College.
Okay.
Like they'll take the elevator down, the elevator doors will open up, and there'll be a hospital scene in front of them.
Yeah.
But there were a couple, of course, improvised surgeries all over.
Oh, yeah. Farnsworth House was also, the nurses were tending to...
Wonderful restaurant, Farnsworth House.
Yeah, isn't it great? Yeah.
I have a funny story about... we went out into one of the fields, and it was around dusk, and my daughter was using the app, to find ghosts. And this app will just say random words. Well, while we were out there, it kept talking over top of itself. It was saying random words and almost would make sentences. It was pretty spooky, even though, the app's not real. But, I just thought that was kind of crazy how the app was talking over top of it.
It's funny. I know 99% of those apps are like novelty.
Yeah, that's
But
fun.
there's a couple out there that are trying to be legit.
And they produce some results.
Right, some do. Yeah, not many though. A lot of them are, they're just for like fun.
Gettysburg, but Gettysburg, I mean, if you're looking for a ghost, you're going to find them even if you're not looking for them.
Right.
Like that strange light that I captured on my camera in the Irish shop. And then no one could explain because all the windows were sealed and there was no light sources. And you could see it moving through. And it was right at an area where the lady who worked there pointed and said, usually this ghost appears in that corner.
Oh, I know what shop you're talking about. Isn't that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the one that's across the street from Farnsworth House?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yeah. I know what you're talking about, yeah. That's crazy.
Well, it's exciting. We'll be down there on St. Patrick's Day.
Nice.
I've already got the reservation.
Wonderful.
We're going to stay at the hotel. It was at 1803.
Okay.
Right next to the Farnsworth.
Okay.
And so Mark, cool things about Gettysburg. So tell us about your writing. What do you like to write?
Well, I used to really like writing Twilight Zone type stories. I still do. But I seem to have kind of gravitated more to the crime or, kind of supernatural crime story.
Right. And so it's mostly short stories. Have you done any books?
Well, I've currently finished 2 of them. The Witch for Hire is my supernatural crime. I've also did the Barry London, which is my mob fixer, he's sort of a private detective for the mafia. His boss lends him out to everybody.
Nice.
That's what a lot of the story's about. I'm almost done with a short story collection about him too.
Yeah, there's 2 that you just mentioned. Are they novellas or full-length novels or?
What's the word count on them? Yeah.
Yes, they are. They're the Witch for Hire is 50,000 words, which I never thought I could ever get to that word count. But I had so much information to put in it, and the Barry London books are going to be a lot less because they're kind of, I would say they're kind of modeled after the Parker books, which especially the early ones, or even the early Ed McBain, which they're only 150 pages, and I'm trying to keep them around 30,000 words, maybe something like that.
Right. It's funny because I had to break into writing books.
Yeah.
And I had done nothing but short stories. Writing a novel scared the hell out of me.
Right.
And I thought, how can you fill up 50,000 words, 60,000 words? How can you do it? So I set out to write a novella with The Street Martyr, and I was going to do 15,000 words, and then I didn't have enough room. I broke 50,000.
Yeah.
And then I come along with Andy Kaufman, Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality, or Searching for Andy Kaufman, and that was only going to be 30,000 words. And it ended at 120,000.
Yeah.
It was fair.
Yeah.
It was fair. And editing that was insane.
I thought mine was bad, ending at 93,000, but 120,000 words. Wow. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, it's down to 90 now.
Good, Matt. Keep hacking away. Get that machete out there.
Yeah.
You're like in the jungles in Borneo, and you're, and then a tiger attacks you.
Right.
Yeah. I swear I'm getting oxygen to my brain now. I wasn't before, but I am now. So
That's good.
I get a little crazier when I'm healthy. Pneumonia's cleared.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, congratulations.
I'm feeling better. Congratulations. You're going to live. Congratulations.
Great.
Yay.
You had your appointment yesterday?
I've had appointments all week.
Oh, all week. Okay.
Yeah, they're investigating something with my heart, but the lung's looking good.
Oh, wonderful, man.
So...
But I know it sounds weird to say congratulations, but...
No, it's been a long time.
It really is, yeah.
It's been a fight.
Yeah.
But we're on Para X Radio Friday nights at 9 p.m. This is episode 108, Paranormal and Pulp Fiction. We're talking to author and old friend Mark Slade, and actually... he's in one of my books, in Mercy. I needed to create another character to sort of balance the plotting and timing a little bit. And so I created the Reverend Mark Slade, who's one of those Bible-thumping, hell-raising characters.
Okay, I remember that.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
He's in there.
I didn't know that. I didn't think of that, the correlation.
He's towards the end, yeah.
Right.
And, of course, Armand Rosamilla's in there.
Oh, okay.
And, Bill Gill's in Andy. Our good friend Bill.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Bill. How you doing?
Yeah, Bill's listening right now.
Yes.
He doesn't know it, but we record this show for one person and send it to his phone. Bill Gill. And he wants more vampires.
So am I a faith healer in this?
Yes, kind of. More like you're a faith ruiner. In the hospital that Willie's trapped in, it begins to sort of break down into this psychotropic dimension. And all these characters begin emerging either from the other world, from his own consciousness. And one of them is this faith healer, Bible-thumping guy.
Right.
And he sort of leads him on the path to the basement.
Right. Absolutely.
But he's full of fire and brimstone.
Ooh.
We were talking about shows like In Search Of.
Right.
And I know they're one of your favorites, Mark, because you love The Twilight Zone, you love In Search Of, and that was narrated by Leonard Nimoy. Spock.
Oh,
Spock.
yeah, the great Leonard Nimoy.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any favorite episodes?
The disappearance of Michael Rockefeller.
Yes.
That was a good one. That was a really good one. And see, the one about the plans, where people are recording their sounds and they're saying they're talking, and when I was a kid that scared me.
Secret Life of Plants.
I don't know why.
Yeah, it's actually from a book.
Because I'm sitting there and I'm watching the TV and I look over at my mom's plants and I go, oh wow, you're talking about me right now, aren't you?
No.
So
Phil, look up. See
I see it.
The basil over there. I think he's talking about you behind your back.
It is. It is literally behind my back. Yes.
So what was the French saint, what was it, the 1500s, the guy who could live forever? Saint Germain?
Yeah.
Was that
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You're the Catholic, Phil.
Yeah, that was one of the best ones, too.
Right.
I know a lot of them, but I'm not sure that one.
It was a good show, and it was based on a series of books, the first one being In Search of Extraterrestrials.
Oh.
And, of course, AMC is premiering that new series, Project Blue Book, which is based on the dramatic telling of the investigation the Air Force did back in the 60s to look into UFOs. And they've actually dramatized the people's stories that they tell these Air Force investigators.
Okay. So I have to ask, in this anthology, Time for Violence, the channel 666?
Yes.
John Russo. Is that the same John Russo that's involved with Night of the Living Dead?
Yeah, I thought so, He's the producer.
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I thought I saw his name there. I think.
And of course, the guys here, Mark and Andy, are doing a book on one of the famous authors.
Oh,
I'm not going to mention which one.
Okay. Evox Dunham.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's leading to good things, and that's what you have to do. You have to get out there and network.
Right.
Like we do with the show. And hopefully we'll have some more of these people on the show over the next few months as we promote A Time for Violence. And it's going to be great. Well, Paul Brazil will be on. Isabella Blackthorne will be around. Tony Knighton's going to be on. And we'll see if we can get the other guys around at least for a written interview. We'll be back on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show, episode 108, Paranormal and Pulp Fiction. Now, we are going to play an excerpt from your story, Mean Business. And this is read by...
Joe Stofko. He's also an actor. So he's going to be featured in some of my episodes.
Oh, fantastic. It's always good to find voice actors. I was listening to it earlier, and he was wonderful. Just wonderful. Okay, so we're going to play this. It's a little bit long for you, but it's really compelling. So just check out A Time for Violence, and then we'll finish up the show with our goodbyes and another ghost story from Mark Nesbitt on What Are You Afraid of? Paranormal Show.
Mean Business by Mark Slade. An excerpt published by Close to the Bone. London had never been further south than Crabtree, Maryland, and that is so far northeast that it crowded Newcastle, Pennsylvania. There he was, though, in Limewater, Georgia, sitting in a hillbilly bar, all eyes on him, and Marty Stewart on the jukebox. One particular man, in an Alabama baseball cap and roll-tide T-shirt, was very interested in London. He sat at the bar nursing a glass of beer, staring a hole in the back of London's head. London was at a table, sitting across from Julep Havers, an associate of London's boss, Peter Choalati. How a hick like Julep Havers got into business with a Cuban crime boss was beyond London. Making money off of chop shops is nothing new for Choalati and his cohorts. Choalati has been in the business since the late 70s, when his brothers set up in New Jersey. Stealing cars and selling them to chop shops all over the country made the Choalati family the darlings of the criminal world. So whenever any of his associates had problems, he lends Barry London out to take care of the problems. "The fat one over there," Julep said, "by the jukebox, talking to the blonde in the white dress." "He knows where your brother is?" London asked, staring a hole in the large man with the long beard and body shaped like an oversized globe. "Yep," Julep answered. "I'm pretty sure Barge Franklin. Those are his brothers, Colin, Rip, Fane, and Toss. I'm sure they held Barge's take rook from the garage last Thursday. The mailman was watching." "Who's the blonde?" Julep shrugged. "Carla. Nobody special. Just some squeeze Barge sees sometimes." "I guess I'll ask him a few questions." London stood. "Wait." Julep tugged on the sleeve of London's sports jacket. "You can't just go up to a Franklin and start asking him if he kidnapped somebody." "Who says? I'll talk first." London pulled away and ambled over to the fat man, the black wife-beater, way too small for his robust body. Just as London tapped the fat man on the shoulder, Julep called out the man's name. London turned, and Julep was right behind him. "Hey, Barge," Julep sounded. "Me and my friend want to know if you got a minute to talk." Barge grunted. His mouth worked overtime on a ball of chaw. He leaned to the side and spat out a long line of brown and black phlegm that wrapped itself around the stripper's pole. "Fuck you want?" Barge said. "Where's Julep's brother?" London wasn't going to waste time with niceties. Barge or any of the other locals in the bar wasn't either. Barge's brother decided they wanted to hear the conversation. Fane and Rip had pool sticks. Colin retrieved the claw hammer from his toolbox on the bar. Toss still had the knife he used to gut the fish he caught this morning. All four had the same scowl that plagued Barge's ugly face. They crowded around London and Julep, screwing in their tiny eyes and breathing heavy for effect. "He's probably face down in a ditch, drunk or stoned out of his head," Barge said, barely raising his voice above a decibel human ears can detect. "I bet Julep didn't tell you Rook is a chicken head. Somebody better tell Rook that meth can rot the brain." London gave Julep a disappointed look. Julep looked away. London knew he still had to take care of the situation, or Choalati would be disappointed in him. He returned his harsh gaze to Barge, who, by now, restarted his conversation with Carla. She made sure Barge looked at her tits. Everyone could see she had no bra on underneath that thin, white cotton dress. "What a man does in the privacy of his own home is his business," London told him. Barge continued to ignore him. "There's a witness that you and your inbred brothers took Rook from their garage." Barge continued to ignore London. The blonde ran her hand through her hair and giggled. London noticed the woman had a cleft in her chin, big enough to land an airplane. Barge's brothers stayed where they were, crowding Julep and London. "Come on, London," Julep said in his lazy, slow accent. "This is a waste of time." Barry London laughed. He unsheathed his Glock from the breast holder and fired it at the man closest to him. The bullet went through the man's left shoe. He screamed, dropped the claw hammer, and fell to the wood floor. A cloud of dust followed, either from the body of Barge's brother or from the floor. The other two scattered, hands over their ears, as Julep did the same. Barge jerked his head around. Carla yelped, trotted to a corner of the bar. You shot Colin," Barge exerted in shock. London put the barrel of his Glock to Barge's fat cheek and said, "I'll bet you talk to me now." "I don't like being threatened," Barge stated. "I don't like being ignored, double stuff," London rattled off, his voice carried louder than the jukebox. "Start talking, or I'll shave some fat off of you." "Okay," Barge said. Anxiety took over. His barrel chest heaved sporadically. "Let's take the conversation to the back." His eyes danced back and forth between London and his other two brothers. "Vane, Toss, help Colin to the back room." Barge turned to the blonde and said, "Carla, looks like you're going to have to get another bullet out of Colin. He's like a magnet for those suckers." Barge laughed at his own joke as he waddled to the office behind the bar. "We were paid to take Rook," Barge confessed. He reached over and turned the radio off. Funny, London recognized the song and the singer, Texas Cookin' by Guy Clark. Pop is a big fan of outlaw country. He has a stack of vinyl records of Townes Van Zandt, Waylon Jennings, and Willie Nelson sitting side by side with James Brown and Curtis Mayfield. Pop works with Choolati as well, running a newspaper stand to cover up the illegal gambling operation. Pop always liked being a surrogate father to London, as well as finding any info London needed to do the job. Pop missed his own sons. He didn't say, but London figured the three of them didn't chat often except holidays and birthdays. So when London asked Pop, a.k.a. Leon Brown, a retired bus driver from Manhattan, why he listened to country music, Pop's response was classic. "Music don't have color barriers, son," he said. "I like the way they sing, and boy, they pick those guitars." London reached over Barge's messy desk and turned the radio back on. Barge didn't like that. "I like that song," London smiled. The song ended, and the commercial came on. London turned the radio off. "Who hired you?" "Lou Stills," Barge said. "He has another chop shop in Kay County. Stills never got along with your family," he said to Julep. Julep nodded. "Goes back to our grandfathers and back when they used to race." "What, like NASCAR?" London asked. "Oh, never got to that," Julep laughed. "Neither grandfather was that good, just local stuff. Once they raced in Atlanta, but both washed out on that track. Track was dirt then. Both hit the wall, got out and started throwing punches right away. And that was in the early 60s. Almost any rule was bent or broken. Both cars had been messed with." London met with one of the brothers' eyes. He was trying to stare London down. He must have seen something and got spooked. The man quickly looked down at his shoes. "Where'd you take Rook?" London asked Barge. "Across the county, in Hopewell. There's an abandoned farm," Barge said nervously. "Look, man, we just did a job. That was all. I really don't dislike Julep. Rook gets on my nerves some, but I ain't out to do nothing bad to Havers. Me and my brothers just did it for 1,000... London stood. Barge leaned back in his chair, his eyes as big as his belly. He drew in a frightened breath with a gaping mouth. His brothers took a few steps back. Julep was well prepared to fall on the floor and bury his face in the blood and cum-stained carpet. London took his wallet from the breast pocket of his jacket. The stress level in the room returned to normal, except for the smell of warm urine. London smiled and wondered which one of them was afraid of him. His guess was Julep, But he should already know he wasn't going to hurt him because of ties to Chooladi. London removed several 20s from the black billfold and counted out $1,000. He laid them out on the desk. "Take me to that farm," London said. "The money is yours. Any blood spilled and you guys survive, you get another 1,000. The farm was 3 counties over and a mile from swampland. No one had farmed on that land for decades. The house had weeds and grass reaching the 2nd floor. All the windows were busted out, and the walls on the back of the house had become non-existent. The 4 barns had definitely been in use, most likely for various criminal activities over several decades. London just knew of the hidden hot cars and one barn used for storing weed. They all rode in Barge's Silverado pickup. Barge drove, and London sat in between him and Julep, with the 3 brothers in the bed, with their rifles and shotguns out in the open. London thought that was the dumbest thing he'd ever seen until he saw 3 or 4 other trucks on the freeway with men in the bed of a pickup with shotguns clinging to them. A cultural shock, no doubt, but a humorous education. Just like he learned that Barge could kill a 12-pack all by himself and still be a competent driver. He nearly hit a tree once. An elderly man in a stained STP cap and a silk blue shirt came out of the 2nd barn. He removed a paper towel that had been tucked in the lapels of his shirt. He chewed feverishly, wiped his mouth with that paper towel, and then discarded it. 15 more men followed, all cradling shotguns, rifles, or flashing pistols. That young blonde from the bar, this time she was wearing jeans and a Run DMC T-shirt. Barge screwed down his mean eyes and uttered an expletive that women usually take offense at. From the elderly man's stance and overconfidence, London gathered the man was Lou Stills. London's eyes met him with Julep's. Julep was shaking. London sighed. He was hiding something, London was sure when he met with Julep. He just had a feeling. Now he was sure. "Get out," London ordered Julep. Julep hesitated, opened the car door. "Hey," London pulled on Julep's pants leg. Julep sat still momentarily. "Speak to Stills and no one else. Tell him why we're here, and don't let your fucking voice tremble, got it?" Julep drew in a breath and strained to let it back out. "Okay," he hiccuped. He got out of the car. Julep wasn't given a chance to say anything. A gun was fired, and a single bullet pierced his forehead. Julep yelped. He kept his mouth open and as wide as his traumatized eyes. A trickle of blood ran down his face before he fell to the ground. Lou Stills had hate in his eyes. He was screaming at his men to fire. "Go, go, go!" London screamed at Barge and ducked in the seat. The truck spun around and Barge's brothers opened fire. A barrage of bullets sharply assaulted the truck. The brothers in the bed of the truck kept the battle going, even though all 3 were struck. 2 of Stills' men were eliminated. As soon as Barge got good length between Stills and his men, the truck slammed into a barn on the far left. Everything went black. "That was some mean business there," London heard someone say, a voice that sounded like it had been run through a blender, followed by laughter. He opened his eyes and saw Lou Stills hovering over the truck, his men standing behind him. At some point, London must have opened the door on the passenger's side and passed out again. There were massive waves of pain in his forehead. He felt blood running down his face. London looked over at the driver's side. Barge was dead. A wooden plank fell from the ceiling of the barn when the truck slammed into the front of the makeshift building, which was built 3 or 4 decades ago and built too swiftly. The wooden plank went through the windshield and tore into Barge's face. Blood had splattered not only all over the seat and dashboard, but soaked the left side of London's jacket. London moved his hand slowly. He felt for the Glock. It was gone. "Looking for this?" Stills showed him the gun, holding it by the muzzle. "You really think we're dumb hillbillies, huh?" Picture is worth 1,000 words, London managed to say. Looks like you're selling the image very well. No, I don't think that. I think you make dumb mistakes. Mister, I don't know you. You don't know me. My boys here tried to convince me to kill you without caring who you are. Still shook his head. I ain't like that, but you attacked us. No, sir, London said, his senses coming back to him quicker the more he blinked his eyes. You shot Julep Havers. Darn for sure shot him. Still screamed. He defiled my little girl, he and his brother Rook. And when I find him... Wait, you don't have Rook Havers? That was the whole reason we came here. You paid Barge and his brothers to bring Rook to you. Why would I do that? Still spit in the opposite direction, wiped his mouth. I have my boys for that sort of thing, mister. I think you got took. I think we both did, London said. My boss is not going to be happy about this. Just who the hell are you? Stills demanded. I'm Barry London. Peter Ciolati sent me to resolve this matter. Stills thought about it. His snarl became broader, but confusion set in his eyes. Now, why would Peter Ciolati be dipping his toes into my waters? I'm protected by Leon Gershom. That part London didn't know. He did know Ciolati and Gershom are friends. Never a sore word between them, and a hostile takeover of either's business concerns would never happen. Unless someone was trying to take over themselves. Look, I don't know you true, London said. I'm pretty certain Rook and Julep Havers had plans to get everyone involved killed, and both chop shops would be theirs. I bet there was a deal with Barge and his family to kill you and your family. But I bet they had help. Can I speak to your daughter? Still's eyes lit up red. His lower lip flubbed for 30 seconds, then went right back into a raspy snarl. My daughter is dead. June killed herself last month, Still said. Oh, shit, London thought. I just put my foot in my mouth. Throw him in the Arbus house, Stills commanded. The boys exchanged glances. Nervous energy filled their bodies. There was a shuffling of feet and guns from one hand to the other. None of the boys jumped at the chance to be at their daddy's beck and call on this incident. Finally, one spoke up. Are you sure about that? What'd I just say? Stills barked. Now you all just get and do as I say. Come on, London tried. I don't know anything about your daughter or what these creeps were up to. London caught the butt of a rifle, and it sent him to La La Land. London woke up. He rubbed the blurriness from his eyes, feeling a piece of hay sticking in his ear. He sat up, looked around. The whole floor of the barn was made up of hay. Old hay, from the looks of it, all of it brown, smelling sour. London heard movement under the hay. He followed the moving strands all the way to his feet. What the hell could that be? Mouse? Rats? Bugs of some sort? He didn't know. London was a city dweller. His only contact was hayride when he was 14, and Mandy Van Barra sat on his lap while he copped a feel. He heard the hissing. Oh, shit, London thought. A snake is in here. London hated snakes. Again, he was not used to the country and all of the creatures that coexist with everyone else. One bored night, London watched a program on American snakes. This would be a test of what he'd learned, since he watched the show 2 or 3 years ago. The snake popped his head up, bright orange patterns around the snake's head. A corn snake. London remembered them being called, harmless, used to cut down on rat and other pest populations. London set out a sigh of relief when the corn snake slithered away from him toward another bale of hay. As soon as he felt a moment of comfort, he heard other sighs, then more slithering. Suddenly, the entire floor of the hay began to move, and soon other inhabitants showed who they were and what snake kingdom they came from. Copperhead, pinewood snake, pygmy rattler, eastern diamondback, red-belly snake. The Diamondback popped up on the left side of London's face. The Diamondback's face was at his cheek, his tongue slipping in and out. London stayed still. His heart was beating so fast he felt the vibrations in his toes. He fought the urge to piss himself. London kept his eyes straight ahead, no blinking. He felt the snake's dry, scaly skin crawl across his face, slither down his neck, and across his belly to an old tractor tire. Why the hell was there so many different kinds in here? London panicked in his head. He didn't know if he said that out loud or just thought it. Because my cousin used this barn to study snakes for his doctorate at the University of Georgia State. Carla stood in the doorway. He don't study no more. Lou shot him for smoking the meth he was supposed to be selling. That's a hell of a story, lady. But can you get me the hell out of here? London said. He tried to contain his fear and nervousness, but his voice betrayed him. Carla laughed, snorted. Just stand up and walk out. I don't want to get bit, London told her. I walked in, didn't I? And I'm barefoot. Sure enough, Carla had no shoes on. Her feet were almost suntanned like the rest of her, and for some reason, paleness collided with the tan and made her pink toenails stand out. Just take a chance, Carla said. 50-50, you won't get bit. I'll leave you here to die. you got shoes on. London decided to put his fears in his back pocket and decided to attempt it. He stood, slowly, and paced his steps as if he didn't care what was crawling on the hay floor. Luckily, he didn't step on any snakes. Carla stepped out of the barn door. London followed and saw one of Still's boys and pushed her to the ground. Carla fell with a whimper, rolled to the right side of the barn behind a hedge. London dropped to his belly and crawled to her. He gripped her neck and squeezed just enough. You scream, London whispered. I'll break your neck. Not if you understand. Her blue eyes were wide and wild. She bobbed her head up and down quickly. Those blonde tresses did the same. She wasn't out of danger yet. London squeezed again to make a point. He had one more demand. Get me out of here. Nod your head if you understand. Carla swallowed back loud sobs and nodded. London removed his hand from her neck. Her chest heaved until her breathing became normal. She sat up, slowly, pointed to an old beat-up gray Sierra pickup with a white shell. No one was around the vehicle. Carla stood, took a few steps to wait for London to get to his feet. She ran to the truck and opened the driver's side. She let London hop in first before slamming the door. One of Lou Still's boys waddled over. He was big and thick-bearded, armed with an assault rifle. Curiously, he wore a roll-tied T-shirt and an Alabama cap. He lived in Georgia. Why didn't he represent the Bulldogs? London ducked to the floorboard, and the blonde tossed a blanket over him. Where you going, Carla? He said. Carla turned the charm on. She stuck her tits out, smiled big, and sighed. Lou wants some chicken. She tossed her hair out of her eyes. Guess I'm going to Wendell's Superstore. Well, all right. Can you get a batch with sriracha on it? You got it, Alva. Carla flooded her eyes. The man's eyes fell from her face to her heaving breasts under the white cotton dress. He began to salivate. She felt a smack on her ankle. That was definitely a signal from London to drive on and quit flirting. Well, Carla giggled, I'll get chicken and Pabst Blue Ribbon coming up. She turned the ignition. The pickup sputtered, then roared. She moved the gear shift to drive and hit the gas. The pickup sped off down the wooded lane, kicking up gravel behind it.
Demons, vampires, werewolves, skinwalkers. All of this and more. Sunday nights at midnight on the Staring Into the Abyss radio show. Come, get lost with us.
All right, here we go. Quiet! Roll up!
Hello everyone, I'm I'm Andrew Willis, the host of Movies Now and Then. We're a podcast that looks at one new release film in theaters, then we compare and contrast it with a classic or underappreciated film from cinema history. We're not a traditional movie show in that we try to have a more conversational approach to our discussion. We want our listeners to be informed, engaged, and hopefully even entertained. If this sounds like something you might enjoy, give us a listen. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or anywhere podcasts are found by searching Movies Now and Then.
The dead demand to be heard, and on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show, Philadelphia's horror home, we listen.
New, true ghost stories every episode. Interviews with paranormal investigators. There is no supernatural.
The natural world is just far greater than we can perceive. More information and expanded content at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com.
And follow us on Twitter at PFWhatAfraidOf. Find us on all major podcast services including iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify, iHeartRadio, or listen to us Fridays at 9 p.m. on the Para X Radio Network.
I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
So what are you afraid of?
If you like what you hear, leave us a review on your preferred podcast service.
What are you afraid of? Horror and paranormal shows.
Speak to the dead.
Para X.
Speaking of Krampus, he knocked on my door the other night.
Did he?
Yeah. He wanted to know when he was going to be on the show again.
Ah.
Because he said he was upset that we didn't have him this year.
Well, his wife canceled on us.
That's what I said. I said, your wife canceled. Then he said, that's no excuse.
Nah.
So, I don't know. and I thought he was gone. I was like, all right, have a good night, bye. And I shut the door, and then I was sitting on my couch, and I noticed him wandering around my yard for like 2 hours. I'm like,
drinking beer and kicking your fence.
Yeah. Well, the next morning, I went outside. All my trash cans were knocked over. My lawn was all dug up. I'm like, oh, God, okay.
Well, we are back on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show with Mark Slade. We've had a great little episode. Talked about some Gettysburg stuff. We played his incredible excerpt, A Time for Violence, called Mean Business. This is basically the premier crime anthology for 2019.
Right.
So incredible authors are in it. It just came together. It all aggregated like an avalanche and rolled together. But it's been cool having Mark on, and it's nice to get him on. You know, we were talking about doing an interview, but I really just wanted him to sort of hang out with us.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the three of us, instead of just doing a one-on-one kind of thing.
Just hang out and chill and talk and,
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Mark, you have some final advice for any of the authors at home listening about how to be successful as an author? Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about the success part. I would worry about just getting somebody to read it to begin with.
Right.
And the other thing is just write what you want to write, and then worry about if you find a market for it.
Those were the days.
Maybe, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. So just focus on the work. Don't worry about the success. That'll come later.
Right.
I like that a lot. And that's the secret to being a happy author.
Mm-hmm.
Because a professional author is made to write a lot of things they don't want to really write. That's stuff that's not in their heart.
Right.
And there are so many months that I've spent writing to a task as opposed to writing what I felt.
What you wanted. Yeah. I agree.
But thank you, Mark. You've been on the show. You've been wonderful. Thank you for joining us. You're Mark Slade. And we hope to have you back.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Appreciate it.
This is episode 108, Paranormal and Pulp Fiction on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Para X Radio Friday nights at 9 p.m. And check out our website for more information about Mark, information about the upcoming book, A Time for Violence, and previous episodes, all our ghost stories, interviews, articles at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. Well, this is T. Fox Dunham.
And this is Phil Thomas.
And we end tonight with another ghost story from Mark Nesbitt. This is The Last Frontiersman. The Last Frontiersman. From Mark Nesbitt's and Patty A. Wilson's Haunted Pennsylvania, Ghost and Strange Phenomenon of the Keystone State. Used with permission by the author, Mark Nesbitt. Read by T. Fox Dunham. The Last Frontiersman. Pennsylvania is filled with tales of frontiersmen, great hunters and trappers. In the early history of the state, it was those daring men who first entered an area. They trapped and hunted and brought back word of the new land and the native people. They often lived peacefully with the natives and seemed to become absorbed by their cultures. In time, some of the Indians and whites intermingled, and many of the mixed-blood descendants likewise earned reputations as great frontiersmen. Among them was a man named Jim Jacobs. His maternal grandfather was the great Seneca chief, Corn Planter, and his father was Captain Jacobs, who founded Fort Kennedag. Jim Jacobs earned a name for himself as a great hunter and trapper. He lived the last years of his life on the Corn Planters Reservation. Stories were told of Jacobs' many youthful exploits, but as an old man he was not happy. Jacobs had wanderlust. He had spent his entire life traveling, living off the land, and taking care of himself. He could not be content to spend his declining years in a village. For John French of Roulette, Pennsylvania, it was no surprise when he saw old Jacobs one fall morning in 1884 as he walked along through the woods. French had seen the old man many times in the past. He had not seen him for several years, however, and assumed that old Jacobs had finally given in and settled down to rest for his last remaining years. Yet on this morning, the old man was carrying his flintlock and meandering along in the past. French stopped to marvel at how well the frontiersman was getting along. "Hello!" French called out. Old Jacobs raised his gun and waved by way of greeting. He stopped and turned back. "See anything?" asked French. The old man shook his head. "Too many people. No room for game. It is not as easy as a hunt as it used to be." Slight disgust registered in his voice. "That's the truth," French agreed. "Of course we're not as young as we once were." Both men laughed. Then the old man rubbed his whiskers and shook his head. "That's the truth," he said with a sigh. The two men passed in more pleasant minutes, standing in the woods that cool late fall day. Eventually their own work called them away, and French smiled as he watched the old hunter fade into the darkness of the trees. The old guy had to be about 90 years old, and he still chose to spend a cold day in the woods hunting. He was amazing. French did not give another thought to the old hunter until he had cause to go to the Indian reservation a few weeks later. While he was there, he mentioned that he had seen Jim Jacobs recently. French was surprised by the looks he received. "Jacobs is not here anymore," he was informed tersely. French persisted. Well, where was old Jacobs living, if not in the village? Surely he was not living in the woods alone to wander somewhere. One of the men he spoke to shook his head. "Much sad," he told the white man. 3, maybe 4 winters ago, Jacob was hit by a train in the night near the town you call Bradford. Next day he was found frozen. Much sad, but still he lived a good life. French shook his head. He told the old man of his encounter in the wood only a few weeks ago. "Must be spirit of Jacobs," the Indian man replied. French did not know how to respond. The entire thing must have been a mistake. Someone else must have been killed on those tracks and been mistaken for Jim Jacobs. A few months later, French had business in Bradford, where the body of the old Indian had supposedly been found. He was there on other business, but decided to stop at the newspaper office and check on the story. Inside, he met the editor and explained the information that he was looking for. The editor disappeared into a little room and came out with a newspaper. He thumbed through it and pointed to a small article as he laid the paper on the counter. "Here you go." There was a bit of excitement about this. An old fella just outside of the town knew the Indian well, and he identified him. Some folks were glad to see him go, but others were sorry. The fella had quite a reputation. French read down through the article and came across the farmer's name. He knew the man and had no doubt that it was really Jim Jacobs who was found on the tracks. Jim Jacobs officially died on February 24th, 1880, at the age of 90, but if the story was true, then whom had he encountered in the woods? Was the old Indian spirit wandering along, hunting and enjoying his freedom in death, as he had no longer been able to do in life?
I look over at my mom's plants and I go, "Oh, wow, you're talking about me right now, aren't you?"
T. Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard, and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Books. A major motion picture based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was recently released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the next Stargate anthology from MGM and Fandemonium Books, Points of Origin. Fox is an active member of the Horror Writers Association, and he's had published hundreds of short stories and articles. His motto is Wrecking Civilization, one story at a time.
Phil Thomas is an author and screenwriter from the suburbs of Philadelphia. His screenplays have been produced into feature films False Face and Always from Darkness, and are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon On Demand. His short films can be viewed on his YouTube channel, Film Zero Presents. He's a member of the International Association of Professional Writers and Editors, and he currently writes for Cultured Vultures, Game Skinny, and BloodyDisgusting.com. His first novel, The Poe Predicament, is being published in 2018 by Caliburn Press.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.